All right, I call the March 18th Lewes BPW workshop covering the wastewater treatment system to order. So first, well, I guess we don't do the pledge of allegiance. Yep. So roll call. We have Barbara Curtis, Preston Lee, Richard Nichols, and Bob Heffernan from the board. We have Max Walton, our legal counsel, sitting in for Mike, Robin Davis, Andrew Williams, the mayor, is not here. And then from the Board of Public Works, we also have Sharon Sexton and, well, I already said Robin Davis. We have the county, Hans Medler, Todd, and Mike, Todd Lawson, with us. And so we'll get started. And Blue, can you tell me how many people are online besides Max? I can't.
42.
Yeah, okay. All right. So moving on. There are slide decks available for everyone. I don't know if everyone has one right now. So this is the agenda we're going to go over is on the first page. How do we get here? Negotiations with Rehoboth Beach, potential options, next steps, and public comments and conclusions. I want to thank everyone for coming out or being online. This is our 7th workshop on the topic. And we had halted for a while we're in negotiations with Rehoboth Beach. But now with the vote against us on 3 weeks ago, we're moving forward with the county. And questions of specific, so I asked that you hold questions till the very end or at the end of the slide if they're pertinent to that slide. We also will be enforcing the 3-minute rule for speaking. So we held our first public meeting on the wastewater treatment location, movement, whatever, on March 31st, 2022. So progress has been going on for 4 years to try to find the right solution. BPW in Sussex County contracted with GHD to perform studies. The first study was delivered, and then the GHD did several other studies for us. Those results were presented to the public on January 23rd, 2023. And the board held 7 workshops, and we discussed it at the board meetings every month. So at this point, you'll see as we move forward, we have 2 options that are on the table, and we'll describe each one of those. In the summer of 2023, so we were moving forward with the option of the constructed wetlands at Wolf Neck. And then in September 2023, Sussex County was informed by DENREC that there was a significant archaeological finding on the site in the phase 1. And that basically put off the constructed wetlands due to the length of time and the cost and the uncertainty of being able to do a constructed wetlands there. If everyone remembers, we had chosen constructed wetlands because of the nutrient removal capacity of it. And so that it would be, I guess, Hans, you'd call it tertiary treatment?
It's enhanced tertiary.
Enhanced. So the findings of that archaeological study made us look at regional solutions. And that was how we went and approached Rehoboth Beach. So in March 2024, BPW and the county reapproached Rehoboth Beach with a more detailed proposal about purchasing or leasing or some means of getting access to their unused capacity of their outfall. We attended over 10 combination with the county and BPW meetings with Rehoboth Beach. December, we had a vote to proceed, and then in February, the vote was 5-2 against proceeding. And that was a $20 million offer to Rehoboth Beach to buy 5 million gallons of their unused capacity of a stranded asset. And the county had made several sweeteners to the offer, and none of them were seemed to sway the end. So due to that, the county and BPW are now back looking at a solution that works for the two entities. So we have two options going forward. And by the way, there was, if everyone remembers, there was a table in the original presentations that listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options. And most of those we've now put aside because of either feasibility or financial aspects. But the two that are remaining are us to partner with the county at Wolf Neck, transmit our influent down to the county, and them to pump back the effluent to the plant to our discharge point, which is already permitted by the state. The second option is to discharge to the canal or the general area in the vicinity of Wolf Neck. And that would include, well, I'm gonna let Hans talk about that when we get to the details. I just want to bring up several concerns that we've heard from some people. One was on the impact of putting 4.5 million gallons of water into the canal and its increase in level. So the 4.5 million gallons is approximately 0.25% of the total flow in the canal. And any rise would be insignificant and would be mostly seen at slack tide. So it's a drop in the bucket as far as the flow in the canal. Both options, matter of fact, all the options we've been pursuing require us to demolish the existing plant and rebuild pump station 4 and 8, or install new pump stations and something along those lines. The best engineering estimate of that is about $10 to $15 million for both the 2 pump stations and for the demolition of the plant to return it back to its native condition. So option 1 is continuing discharge into the canal at existing location. So as I said before, this option includes BPW's pumping BPW's wastewater down to Wolf Neck, reconfiguration of pump station 4 and 8, and discharging the effluent on the outgoing tide back to our discharge point. And that was in our prior report outs. For the increased flow to the canal and having listened to the public's input, some type of enhanced tertiary treatment would be installed at Wolf Neck. And that would be for either of these two options. So whether it's membranes or other type of technologies, that would be an upgrade from where we were before. Coming back to our point is the second lowest cost option with the least permitting issues. And the projected capital cost is about $10.5 million. And that's just the incremental cost over the rebuilding of Wolf Neck. Hans, you want to talk about tertiary treatment? Or enhanced treatment?
Yes or
Yeah.
no?
That's right.
So, we had initially, when we said the outfall in Rehoboth under consideration, that we would use identical treatment to what we provide at South Coastal to the Rehoboth water, which is, like essentially the same location. And that constitutes of gravity downflow filters, which is a standard tertiary treatment. In this particular one, because of the nutrient aspects, we would either have to look at denitration type filtration or have additional polishing steps beyond the traditional gravity downflow, which would be, my membrane filters or disc filters, something of that nature. So that will get us down to the levels that we can then stay within the wastewater allocation as it currently exists.
And I should introduce Hans Medlar is the retired consulting engineer for the county. Or is that the right title?
Director of Special Projects.
Thank you for the special information. Preston just asked me to point out that, so the current discharge location is right where the railroad bridge used to be that went across the canal. And so we would go back to that general area with the discharge. And we'll talk about the location of the second option next year. So the second option is continuing discharge into the canal at a point closer to Wolf Neck. This is similar to the prior option. The only difference being a modified point of discharge and using existing waste load allocation. This option would include pumping BPW's waste to Wolf Neck, reconfiguring pump station 4 and 8 as the prior ones, and then discharging into the canal near the Wolf Neck facility. There would be tertiary treatment here also, or enhanced treatment. This is actually the lowest cost option because you don't have to pump back up to our discharge point. And the capital cost of this portion is $3.5 million. And Hans, do you want to talk a little bit about where this discharge point would be?
I'd like to talk a little bit about how we will determine where the discharge point will be. So, because I would be lying to you if I knew exactly where it is. But you may recall that the county has one of the steps we did leading up to the Rehoboth decision engaged through GHD with a specialized consultant, Verser, to do ocean benthic studies and model dispersion modeling. So a couple of weeks ago, right after the events at the commissioners in Rehoboth, we, being the team from GHD and myself, re-engaged with Versa at 2 different meetings and regroup their effort towards the canal and in that Wolf Glade area. So the strangely enough, their chief, or sorry, I should say, senior scientist had a seminar here at the UD Center and had done a lot of scoping out for that. That was last week. So we expect the revised study proposal to come in the next few days. So they're still keeping the time slot open. They still will be there sometime at the end of April and doing the studies here in the canal area. Once we have the basis of the studies, we can get a better idea what the dispersion should be and the diffusion, and B, what the impact on any micro life in that general area of the canal is. Is there a wide variety or not? You know, for example, they will know that. We said they would also they also will sample up the glade, so we get some sampling there as well as some of the marsh areas. So it'd be a fairly comprehensive study. In the meantime, GHD will be engaging on the bathymetry of the canal and initiate the hydraulic model. So all these things we previously stated, and they're moving forward. But that in itself is, you know, like before we have a clear answer on how the discharge would look and where it exactly would occur, we probably have 2 sampling cycles and some reports from Versa, as well as some dispersion modeling going on.
An estimated time frame on that?
I would think that one is about a year time frame because we don't have to go through many iterations for that. And that would not be necessary if we stay at the current location, but that's just a piped out, that's a pipe into the canal in the same location, you know, without doing a lot of analysis. So hence, there's some timeline involved. It's cheaper, but there's more time involved.
Okay, and Hans, Wolf Glade that you referred to is kind of a creek.
Wolf Glade is the tributary to the canal, yes.
So the cost delta between the 2 options is about $7 million. BPW County Ocean Outfall. We had considered building our own ocean outfall in the vicinity of Wolf Neck. And both for the same reasons why Rehoboth Beach's request for multiples increases on for the use of their outfall. This outfall also turns out to be not financially feasible. It would increase rates to both the county residents and to BPW residents outside of what we believe would be acceptable. So next steps. We will continue to have this item as a discussion item and topic on our monthly board meetings, as we have in the past. We'll continue discussions with the county as things progress. Written public comment, we'll take public comment here at the end, but written public comment can be submitted through the website. In the pamphlet, if you go to the BPW homepage and scroll down to the right, there is a button that says wastewater treatment facility. If you click on that, there's a button to the left that says submit comments. So we encourage everyone who is interested to submit comments through either the portal or through or today. So at that point, I'm gonna first I'm gonna open it to the board. Is there any comments that anyone wants to add?
I mean, just pointing out, some people won't know where pump station 4 and 8 is. I think we've discussed it several times, but you know, 4 is right at the base of the bridge, the pumping station that sits there by the bike racks. And 8 is down over the bridge at the corner of American Legion Road and Savannah Road.
Yeah, by where the this and that shop used to be.
Yeah, that's still there.
Anyone else? All right, any public comments? Any comments from, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. State your name and,
Thank you. Alan Roth, 437 Kings Highway. Questions, really. I'm assuming perhaps incorrectly that the capital cost of either option would be borne by Lewes BPW ratepayers. If I'm incorrect, please tell me. If that's the case, have you contemplated at this point what kind of financing that would involve, if any? Second question, on an ongoing basis, how would operating costs be borne? And how would they, if in any way would they be divided between Lewes BPW and the county? How would they be calculated? And what arrangements, if any, have been discussed with the county for how those calculations would be made?
sure, so, we had started discussions with the county on a agreement that would cover all of what you just said. And we stopped that about a year ago when we were in depth with Rehoboth Beach, because we didn't know what type of plant we were building and where the pipes were and everything else. So now we've passed a term sheet to the county. The county is looking at it, and it will be one of the next steps to finalize the agreement and the cost splitting and who's gonna pay for what. But, you know, basically, it will be proportional to our load versus our flow versus their flow. So, not a definitive answer, but, you know, we had to get the technology locked down first to be able to move forward. Anyone else? Blue, anyone on the line? All right, well, at that point, we want to thank everyone for their continued input, and you know, we will work with the county now to decide which path to go forward with, and we will keep the public informed. So,
Well, there's a lot of information still to be gathered about these
Right.
two options in more detail and how to proceed. And, you know, what to do with pump station 4 and 8 and some others.
well, and independent from what we've discussed here, we're looking at feasibility of pump station 4 and that, so that's progressing on its own path. And, you know, we will need that regardless of which way we go forward. So there are multiple things that are feeding into this, but not to the main, you know, to the main crux of the decision.
The decommissioning of the existing plant, whenever that does take place, is not part of the budget estimate,
No, it's the
is it?
$10 to $15 million I mentioned up front. That is the cost of 2 new pump stations and demolishing the plant.
And so it does include it,
Yes,
okay.
and that's,
But not the slides. It's not on the slides. It's not in the 3.5 million or the.
no, it's not in the 3.5 and 10.5.
I think that was-
It's in
Oh, okay.
what I just, and, you know, right now, those are ballpark estimates. We have to determine how much reconfiguring can be done versus how much new has to be done. So those we can fine tune, but just put an order of magnitude on it. And that $10 to $15 million includes contingencies, so.
What's our best guess on when we might have these two in focus? I mean, is that 6 months or?
we guessed with Hans was saying it's a year to get the study done.
Well, there's a number of things we will be immediately working on firming up. And one is the design of the facility, because that doesn't change, because we have a canal discharge, we have to live within the wastewater allocation. So that process will firm itself up over the next 2 or 3 months in coordination with the department, the NRC. So once we have that, we get a much better idea what that will cost. In the meantime, you will firm up your pump station design. How are you going to configure your force mains? How are you going to do your pump station upgrades? So that number will come into focus. And then the last number, which is the floating number, is, are we going to bring the pipe back to the existing discharge point, or are we going to have a modified discharge closer to the facility? So that will only be able to be fully evaluated after the studies are completed. But the bulk of the money is in the treatment, and it's in the pump stations and decommissioning. That the pipeline and the outfall configuration at both neck are the minor component to that. So I think within 6 months, you should have a pretty clear picture of what the numbers are. Especially if you think of it as a delta as presented today, there's a $7 million delta. You could just say, okay, we're going with the more expensive option. Then you have, here's your worst case scenario.
Okay, and then. So in 6 months, we have sort of a better picture of what can happen. here.
Mhm.
And then. We also have an issue maybe with Denrick about the outfalls and whether they're gonna. Whether we have an outfall. You don't. So if they were to be difficult about it. We gotta use our outfall, which is permitted, and we can use that. If they wanna be difficult, that's what we have to do. So we have to have some ongoing discussions with them, and
Right.
things might be different with the new
And
regime up there.
there's some preliminary discussions that happen with DNREC, but once we get through this meeting, we can have more detailed discussions with them.
I mean, we as the engineering department, the administration, have opened these channels of communication. They're actually happening this week. They were happening last week. So we will make it very transparent. These are the 2 paths forward. We made it clear what our advantages were on either one of them, and we expect some feedback. Regulators are reluctant to give you feedback because you're the regulated entity, and they want to reserve the right to regulate you. But this having said, there are environmental benefits and there are financial benefits. So, we as the party interested in moving forward, we want to do the best thing environmentally possible. And that having said that, the department is also interested in coming up with a let's call it preferred solution. So I don't think, Todd, would you add anything to that? No. So that's, as I said, we're literally engaging this week at the highest level with the secretary to get some feedback.
And I think the DENREC has been interested in us getting out of the floodplain too. I think there's a positive on there.
I think FEMA might be helping with some money. We fully expected some money from FEMA will flow into that project
Sure.
for that reason.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we had some people come in. Any questions or comments? There are slide decks available in the entrance table. All right, at that point then, do I have a motion to?
How about Bill?
Oh,
Yes.
call to the press.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No,
How about Bill?
So you mentioned demolishing the current plant. What kind of infrastructure goes in its place?
That is so far down the line.
Okay, but is
No,
that,
no, seriously.
Yeah.
We have to restore it back to its nature and environment.
Okay.
And then it's jointly owned between us and the city.
Mhm.
So we'll have to, work with the city and see
Okay. But the infrastructure we're talking about, that, is that the kind of thing that Barbara's subcommittee looked at? All that new technology, all those things in that presentation that you did last year?
Yeah, no, we looked at possibly building something on the site that would be elevated far enough above the floodplain that it wouldn't be a concern. It's expensive, and looking holistically at the options that have been available to us and why we're choosing what we're choosing now. I initially loved the idea of the wetlands, the constructed wetlands. So we have zero discharge, we're putting clean water back into the ground. I thought that as an environmental scientist, that was my preferred solution. And that was shot down. Discharging to the ocean, that resolves the problem of people being concerned with discharge to the canal, even though the water we discharge is of higher quality than the water that's flowing through the canal in general. So ocean discharge would have taken away that concern, that public concern, but then people in Rehoboth Beach were worried about the impact on tourism. The other thing is discharging to the canal, you don't have to worry about nutrient removal. So
Remember, you do have to worry about the nutrient for the canal.
in the canal you do, right. So that's why there's additional treatment that will be added at Wolf Neck so that their water, discharge water is as clean as the water we have now from our wastewater treatment plant. So we went down the decision tree of what's best for the environment, what's has the greatest public acceptance, and then what's at a reasonable price. And the two options we're looking at now are the result of other decisions that came before.
But in answer to your, I think, direct question, we have no plans to put any infrastructure after demolition there.
Okay.
Other than the potential relocation of pump station 8
Mhm.
from where it is, which is very low ground, closer to the boundary fence
Okay.
where the plant is, which is a whopping 6 or 7 feet.
Mhm.
But, you could build a pump station so that it's bulkhead doors and watertight. But the Board of Public Works has no interest, no plans to put anything back on that land.
Okay.
And we would have to work with the city though, as I said.
Yeah, and we've not been able to find a location near enough to build something new.
Right.
So.
Thanks.
All right, anything else for the cause? With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
So it's Richard and Press seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.